Is the injury bug actually hit Baylor basketball, or is there something extra going on here that we're not supposed to know about? Let's get locked on Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello there, Bears fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by FanDuel. I'm your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and The Cam Show on YouTube through Rogue Media Sports Network. Appreciate you making it your first listen today and every day, both the morning and the evening editions of Locked On Baylor. Today, we're going to be talking about this whole now controversy surrounding the injuries on this Baylor basketball team and whether the Bears should be shorthanded going into their game tonight against Texas Tech. Plus, how can these Bears keep that momentum going and actually beat a really good Tech team in a really tough environment? We'll go over the keys to that game. And why are some of the football players that Baylor has recruited, why then suddenly, once they commit to Baylor, do their ratings drop precipitously? We'll go over all that and more on this episode of Locked On Baylor. It's kind of the topic of the day when it comes to Baylor men's basketball. We've heard it through the last few games, how great it's been when they come up with wins because they're shorthanded, because they have such an injury epidemic going through the locker room right now. Or do they? Because there was kind of a tip of the cap to this on Saturday a little bit from Scott Drew in the post-game press conference when asked about VJ Edgecombe. He said, well, he was celebrating a little bit, but we know that VJ will get back as soon as he can because he wants to play, wants to be out there with his guys, and we just know that he wants to be out there. And that's a little odd because it's obviously implying that some guys don't necessarily want to be out there. And they've had, guys dealing with injuries all year. And, it's been day to day. And we dealt with this so many times, dealt with this last 2 years with Langston Love, LJ Cryer the year before that, this day to day that turns into month to month and season to season. And then there was a tweet this morning from Ashley Hodge of Sikkim 365. And let me tell you, I like Ashley, and there's no one more plugged in than he is. And he tweeted out a tweet that has since been deleted. What Baylor men's basketball has done shorthanded has been nothing short of miraculous. But what is going on with Langston Love and Jeremy Roach? Love has been cleared to play for a month and won't. Roach is cleared to play, refuses to, and is seen at bars on Saturday night. Disappointing. Now, that tweet has been taken down. I'm sure someone, reached out and had that tweet taken down. Maybe there's something out of context there, but let me tell you guys, I'm hearing the same things from other people around the program, people that were out on Saturday night. I'm hearing the same things, that the guys were out there, including Jeremy Roach, next to the DJ booth at Scruffy Murphy's when he can't play due to concussions. Concussions are tricky, right? Like it's one of those ones where, you don't necessarily just get cleared and go. Like you got to clear through a couple of different phases. But Scott also said after the game that Roach, they thought he was going to go on Friday night. And then Saturday morning or late Friday night, I think he said, then all of a sudden he can't go. And that he's been practicing. He's been cleared to practice, but not to play. Now, according to the NCAA concussion protocols, that can be true, but it's odd that he was out to practice Friday night and the team thought he was going to be able to play Friday night and then get a call that he can't. That's odd. It's also worth noting that he was listed as day-to-day in a Utah trip that he didn't even go on. So we don't know what to go off of. And Langston Love, it's another one where he's clearly coming back from several injuries last year. But I've heard some similar things that he can go out there, and that there might be a money thing involved with this, an NIL thing, as to why he's not out there playing. With Jeremy Roach, I don't know what the deal is. The only thing that I could think of that would keep him out if he was healthy enough to play would be applying for a medical red shirt. But you have to play in 30% of your team's games or less. And he's already played 15 games. Nobody in college basketball is playing 50 games this year. So I don't know how that works, but we've seen it, man. We see it all the time now with medical red shirts and guys getting 5th, 6th, 7th years, and there's ways around that. So this could be a situation where Jeremy Roach might just trying to get another year of eligibility because he's technically out after this year. And I don't think he'd honestly tell you that things have gone the way it was planned for coming to Baylor. And I think that's probably on both sides. Jeremy Roach is a guy who got a lot of money to come here. And if I know it's weird that you can, get cleared for practice and not for a game, but I find it hard to believe that you're not cleared for a game that day, but you can be out at a nightclub that night with concussion symptoms, concussion protocol. It's just not adding up. I don't understand this. And again, Ashley is someone that really knows his stuff, man, and someone I have a ton of respect for. If he's going out there, whether it's been deleted or not, he's not just going rogue. Like there's something up here. And I think we've seen it from a distance as fans in terms of just like, hey, something doesn't look right with this team. And now hearing some things from around that locker room, it's just something's off here. I don't know if it's just a money thing. I don't know if it's the way the team's been going. I don't know if it's the way that these guys, interact with one another. But I've heard problems surrounding all three of those things, all three of them. So it could be a combination of all of them. And we're in the age now where it's tougher and tougher to say, even for adults, commentating on these things. It's getting tougher and tougher to say, oh, well, they're just kids. Jeremy Roach and Langston Love are adults. They're in their 20s. They've played a lot of college basketball, and they're getting paid a lot of money. They're getting paid a lot more than I am, and a lot more than some of you that are listening and watching every day. At some point, you're professionals. You know what I mean? And this kind of stuff can't happen. I'm all for players going and celebrating after a game. Absolutely. That's a big time win. But when you're not cleared to play because of a concussion and you're out there, it's not a good look. It's not a good look at all. And again, this is hearing from multiple people that were out at Scruffs on Saturday saying, that's kind of weird that these guys are out here and they couldn't play today. And for Ashley Hodge to come out and say, yeah, Langston Love's cleared to go. I don't know what else that could be, but a money thing or a transfer portal thing. Because, Jeremy Roach, on the other hand, might be trying to keep an extra year of eligibility, but I'd say there's very little guarantee that he would use that year up at Baylor. Even though the Bears might be in need of a point guard next year if Rob Wright goes in the NBA draft. Things have not been going all right in terms of on the court for either side. Baylor's been disappointing as a team, and I don't know that Jeremy Roach loves his role on this team. So there's a lot of smoke here. There's bound to be some sort of fire because it's not making sense that for the third year in a row, fourth season in a row, actually, that day to day becomes month to month. And day to day turns into these guys might never put on the uniform again. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's an NIL thing or a training staff thing, but something is not adding up here. And it gets masked by an awesome win on Saturday. But once the losses start coming again, you best believe this is going to be more to the forefront. And people are going to be asking questions about what is happening with this team, both in the locker room and on the court. And now it becomes a big burning question to Scott Drew. Can these guys play? Are they cleared to play? Are they physically able to go out there and play? Because if they're healthy enough to go out there and play, then there's no excuses when you're making in the six figures. There's no excuses. Either way, it's going to be a tough one for these Bears in Lubbock tonight, whether they're shorthanded or otherwise. We'll go over how the Bears can pull off this upset and keep this thing going coming up next on Locked On Baylor. Today's episode of Locked On Baylor is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or betting the coin toss, the app is super easy to navigate, and you are able to get in on the action so easy with FanDuel. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to final whistle. So download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, I have confidence in you, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. So on to the business at hand for the Bears that are going to be out there on the court tonight. Congrats, you got your first big win of the season. It's one of the great comeback victories in Baylor history. You really knock Kansas in the mouth. You get this great reception from the Foster Pavilion. Congrats. Now you got to go on the road and play a Tech team that is pissed off and hot, which is not the way that you want to run into a team, especially in a great home environment like it will be at the USA, because it's a big game. I said it on the show yesterday, the evening edition yesterday, which was part of my crossover with Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12. I think Tech is scary good, to be totally honest with you guys. For me, it's Iowa State and Tech, and Houston pretty close by. And I've changed my tune on Houston. I think Houston's a better team than I thought they were going to be going into the season. I thought they were a little overrated, and maybe they still are. But I think they're comfortably better than Kansas and Baylor. And looking at this Tech team, they lose probably their best player a minute or two into the game. They lose their coach a minute or two into the game on Saturday, and all they do is win. They win at Houston at the Fertitta Center. Fertitta? Nobody wins there. Nobody wins there outside of UH. And they take it in overtime in one of the gutsiest wins of the season in this conference. Tech is legit, man. They're legit. They're 13th in the rankings as of Monday, with that new rankings being overturned, and they are 9th in KenPom, which is what we pay attention to. And Baylor's, by the way, up to 12th in KenPom. So this is a top 15 KenPom matchup, even though only one team in this matchup's in the rankings, and they're not even inside the top 10. But Tech showed something big over Houston on Saturday. Again, we've seen how tough it can be when your coach gets ejected. Like Baylor gave up a 20-0 run right after that against Iowa State in that game last year. They came back and won that game, and Tech did the same out there at UH. They don't turn the ball over. Neither team had more than 13 turnovers. They shot 40% from three. They're one of the best three-point shooting teams in the conference this year. In fact, they're the only team in the Big 12 that is in top 5 scoring offense and top 5 scoring defense. The only one in the conference. Grant McCasland, guys. All he does is win games. You might not love the style. The style might change from week to week, month to month, team to team. But all the guy does is win. And he gets his teams in position to compete for conference championships, which is exactly what he's got with this team right here in year 2. Like, they're ready to go. And honestly, if I know this is a moot point now, but if Scott Drew had taken that job at Kentucky, and, Baylor's NIL people said, no, we're not giving you a blank check, and he took that job at Kentucky, I think Grant McCasland would have been your guy. Of course, there's all kinds of Scott Drew assistants you can pick from. Tang, obviously, at Kansas State. Jacobs had just left for FAU, and Grant McCasland was in year 1 at Tech, which is a good job. Tech's a good job, but I think that's who Mac Rhodes would have really pushed for to come and get, would be Grant McCasland. And talk about a weekend for the Scott Drew tree, huh? Scott with the hand in Kansas, their biggest blown lead in the history of their program. Tang wins by 20 on the road at Hilton kind of out of nowhere. And this obviously gut check victory for Tech, which, by the way, Tech has not only won 6 in a row, but I found this stat very interesting. 11 straight years of beating a top 10 opponent. 11 straight years of doing that. Tech was not good all that time. Trust me, I remember like 14, 15, 16, even 17, like they were USA when it's packed out, that's a tough place to play. And I'm guessing that was a big part of it, was they would win some big home games every year. But 11 straight years beating a top 10 team, that shows me, and Baylor's got probably a pretty good stretch of that as well. I don't want to say that it's just, Tech's so great, Baylor's not. But that shows me that's a program with balls that and can protect their home court. And we know that it's been rather tough for Baylor to win at Tech. They don't do it very consistently. I think they did it in 23 with Keontae, but they did not last year. They did not in 22, which was a really good team. So it's a tough place to go and play, and you'll see it tonight. It'll be sold out, packed out to the gills. And honestly, I like Tech fans most of the year, but they'll have some nasty things to say about Baylor. But back to their team, man. JT Toppin, obviously has been a huge revelation for them, a guy they kind of picked up late out of the transfer portal. But McMillan and Elijah Hawkins have been a terrific backcourt for them, and they move the ball really well. One of the best teams in the conference in assist to turnover. Again, a pretty good three-point shooting team, which they haven't always been. They've just been known as kind of that knockdown, drag out defensive team, but they're the second best three-point shooting team in the conference. They're shooting 38% from three, and they hold their opponents to 31%. Baylor's not far behind them on the offensive side. It's 37% from three, but as we've talked about on this show before, they don't defend the perimeter well. That's something they're going to need to do well in this game, because so much of college basketball comes down to guard matchups these days. And if you have a VJ Edgecombe who's not 100%, which I doubt he will be, and no Roach and no Love, then Tech's going to have a distinct advantage in the backcourt, as well as Rob Wright has been playing the last few games, and someone I have a ton of confidence in. Like if you have just Rob Wright and a 50% VJ Edgecombe and Jaden Nunn, like that's not good enough against these guys, Hawkins and McMillan. It's not good enough. And I think you also need VJ as healthy as possible, probably to guard Toppin. I said this about Yegor Demon last week. Like, they don't have a guy who can just consistently guard the wing guy. The way that Jalen Bridges could in the past, the way that Matthew Meyer could in the past, honestly, the way Mark Vital could at times, even though you didn't want to stretch him out too far from the paint because he was such a good rebounder. But he was definitely capable of that. Chuma Chachua, another guy you didn't want to pull too far away from the rim, but he could do that. The only guy who could really do that on this team is VJ. And being a freshman, it's not going to be lockdown defense 100% of the time. And I don't know what you're getting from VJ tonight, if you're getting any VJ tonight. But that could be the X factor in this thing. It's going to come down to the backcourt battle, and it could come down to who's hotter from three. Like I think it really could. I think Tech can abuse them in that area of the floor. And VJ is now all of a sudden your best 3-point shooter. So if you don't have him, Jaden Nunn's not picking up that slack for you. He hadn't been doing that this year. So honestly, for me, you're going to need another huge performance from Rob Wright. You're going to need another huge performance from Norchad Omier. And you're going to need VJ to be somewhere between 60 and 80% to have a chance in this game. That's what Baylor's going to need. And if they do somehow pull this out in Lubbock, then we're off to the races. Then we might just forget about the guys who can play but are not playing. Because if they could do Kansas at home and then Tech on the road, which could be one of their toughest games of the year, like genuinely, Tech on the road, the way they're playing right now especially. If they can get that done tonight, All bets are off on this team. That could be the case. Baylor football, having a good time recruiting. But if you commit to Baylor, the short-term future might not be all that great. That's what the ratings are telling you. We'll try to break down why next on Locked On Baylor. This message is brought to you by our friends over at TurboTax. Now, you guys know the deal. Taxes used to be waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back at all, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Well, now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible, file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. All so you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. It's been a great start to the class 2026 for Baylor football. After a pretty fun 2025 recruiting class that we're going to start to see, the fruits of that labor, hopefully pretty soon coming up this year. But we talked about it with the transfer portal. When these guys commit to Baylor or to Big 12 schools, more vaguely, their ratings just drop. On3, 247 rivals. Like, it doesn't make any sense. These guys were, 4 stars in the portal, and then they commit to BYU, and it's 3.8 stars now. Like, for what? They haven't played since then. But, if they're going to the Big 12, they must not be as good as we thought. If they're going to Baylor, they must not be as good as they thought. It happened as recently as this cycle for Baylor, the A&M nose tackle, whose name I don't have in front of me, so I'm not going to try. I don't want to disrespect that. He was another one whose numbers dropped there. His rating dropped. And here it happened again. It happened again on Monday with rivals. And I had to double check that it was true, but I was tipped off from this tweet from David Smoke, another Sikkim 365 guy, usually talking about other teams, but he decides to stick with Baylor here. Dear rivals, London Smith commits to Baylor and drops 103 spots the next week with your updated rankings. And then he leaves his email in case you guys want to email Smokey. That's smokeyhsfb@gmail.com in case you wanted to do that. But I had to double check this, go to rivals, and it's true. London Smith down 103 spots to 153 overall the week after he commits to Baylor. Let me reiterate once again. London Smith has not played a down of football since committing to Baylor. In fact, as we went over with his commitment last week, he was getting offers from everywhere. Alabama, Oregon, Texas were all not just recruiting, but pushing hard for them. All of the fans of those teams that are going to tell you they're not, but they were. And he was a high 4-star guy with offers from every major program in the country. And then he commits to Baylor and suddenly he drops over 100 spots. Make it make sense. The only thing we can deduce from this is that there is some sort of bias in Big 12 schools and schools like Baylor. That, once you commit there, we might have been wrong. Might have been wrong about that. It's like that great team that just does good business all the time. When I was growing up, it was the St. Louis Cardinals, right? And once they would trade for a guy, or they'd be interested in a guy, all of a sudden other teams would be like, ooh, maybe this guy is better than we thought. Maybe we can get more out of him. The Cardinals always have an eye for talent. This is like the inverse of that. We really like London Smith. Boy, do we love him. And look at all these teams, all these major programs, CFP programs going after him. Boy, he is one of the best playmakers in the state. Oh, wait, he committed to Baylor? Ooh, better drop him down. Better drop him down pretty quick. It's an inexact science, obviously. We all know that. But that kind of drop is ridiculous. Like we see guys who are 4 stars or 3 stars, and they commit early in the cycle, and then going into that senior year, they probably should be moving up, and they're not because they're already committed. Like, we see that, but this isn't even that. This is a guy they just didn't like his commitment. They didn't like that he committed to Baylor, and so they dropped him down. Not moving up, dropping down, actively hurting his rating. It doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. And I mean, Baylor's just going to keep getting that disrespect. So now then we have to take their recruiting classes with a grain of salt, right? Because it happened with the class 2025. It was top 20 after the summer. And then, by the time the winter transfer portal term comes around, then they're like 37th. They dropped from like 18th to 37th. From what? It just doesn't make any sense. So I can't make heads or tails of it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Tomorrow, we're going to have to go over some scheduling because the schedule drops Tuesday morning. So actually, I guess this afternoon and tomorrow we'll be talking about it. But Arizona State is the one we know. Brent McMurphy reporting it Monday night. Arizona State, September 20th. Ooh, that's a tough September schedule for your Baylor Bears. We're going to talk about that more later on today and tomorrow. Be sure to leave a comment on what you think about this Baylor basketball situation and who's healthy and who's not, and what happens with these recruiting rankings. Please let me know down in the comments below. Why are they disrespecting Baylor like this? And do you think they could pull off the upset against Tech tonight? Give me your score predictions down in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe. Ring that notification bell to get notified every time we're dropping a video, twice a day at least, here on your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.